Perceptions about countries around the world can vary drastically based on different factors, such as politics, history, and international relations. Some countries, over time, ended up acquiring a negative reputation in the eyes of other nations and their citizens, whether due to government decisions, conflicts, or economic issues. Today, we will explore a list of the 10 countries that face the most unfavorable perceptions on the global stage, analyzing the reasons behind these impressions. If you are curious to know which countries are on this list and what led to these negative perceptions, stay with us until the end of the video. Before we start, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you don't miss any more content like this. A country's reputation on the international stage can be influenced by a series of factors, such as its foreign policies, economic decisions, armed conflicts, or diplomatic crises. Some nations, over time, have faced a negative image, not necessarily because of their citizens, but due to political or historical issues that affect how they are viewed globally. These perceptions can be fueled by international conflicts, human rights issues, or even cultural stereotypes. Although perceptions may change over time, certain countries continue to face challenges related to their international image, which affects their relationships with other nations and even their economies. This video is not intended to reinforce negative feelings, but rather to analyze the factors that led some countries to be viewed unfavorably. Number 10. Venezuela. In recent years, Venezuela has faced an economic and political crisis that has severely affected the country's international perception. The government and internal policies have generated criticism in many parts of the world, especially regarding the management of the economy, which has resulted in a humanitarian crisis with food and medicine shortages. Furthermore, the mass migration of Venezuelans to neighboring countries, such as Colombia and Brazil, has also influenced the negative view that many have of the country. Political instability, coupled with international sanctions, has caused Venezuela to be widely discussed in terms of governance and human rights, affecting its global reputation. However, this perception is much more focused on the political situation than on Venezuelan citizens, who have struggled to overcome internal difficulties. Number 9. Iran. The international perception of Iran is strongly influenced by its government policies and diplomatic relations, especially regarding its nuclear program and tensions with Western countries. Since the 1979 Iranian Revolution, the country has faced economic sanctions and diplomatic isolation in various parts of the world, mainly by the United States and its allies. Iran is also often associated with tensions in the Middle East, and its position in regional conflicts contributes to a negative image in some nations. The combination of international economic and political restrictions generates an unfavorable perception, especially in the West, despite the country's rich culture and history. As in other cases, it is important to remember that negative international perception tends to be more directed towards government policies and not necessarily towards Iranian citizens. Number 8. Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is often viewed negatively in many parts of the world due to human rights issues and its domestic politics. The country's position on issues such as freedom of expression, women's rights, and the application of strict laws has attracted criticism from international organizations and Western countries. Furthermore, Saudi Arabia's involvement in regional conflicts, such as the war in Yemen, has also contributed to the negative perception of the country in some parts of the world. The control that the government exercises over the press and the repression of dissent are other points that affect its global image. Despite these issues, Saudi Arabia has an influential position on the international economic scene, especially due to its importance in the global oil market, which maintains it as a crucial actor in international relations. Number 7. North Korea. North Korea is widely viewed negatively by much of the international community due to its policy of isolation and authoritarian government. The country is often associated with human rights issues, with reports of severe restrictions on the freedom of its citizens and the existence of forced labor camps. Furthermore, the development of North Korea's nuclear program and repeated military tensions with neighboring countries, such as South Korea and Japan, as well as the United States, have contributed to the country's negative image. The lack of transparency in official communications and isolation from the rest of the world only amplify this unfavorable perception. Despite this, the population of North Korea is largely the victim of political and economic decisions, and it is important to distinguish between the government and the citizens. Number 6. Russia has faced negative perception in many parts of the world due to its foreign policies and involvement in international conflicts. Russia's role in global crises, such as the 2014 annexation of Crimea and allegations of interference in foreign elections, have damaged its image in several nations, especially in the West. Sanctions imposed by European countries and the United States in response to these actions have contributed to Russia's diplomatic isolation in some areas. Furthermore, the repression of political dissent and control of the media also affect how the Russian government is perceived globally. It is important to remember that these perceptions relate primarily to government actions and do not reflect the general opinion of the Russian people, who continue to be recognized for their rich cultural and historical heritage. Number 5. China is one of the largest economies in the world, but it also faces a negative perception in several countries, mainly due to its internal policies and international relations. The Chinese government is often criticized over human rights issues, especially regarding its treatment of ethnic minorities and its crackdown on political dissent. Strict control over the internet and censorship are also aspects that generate criticism from international organizations. Furthermore, territorial disputes in the South China Sea and growing trade tensions with other nations, particularly the United States, have contributed to the deterioration of its image in some parts of the world. China's growing influence in the global economy also raises fears in certain countries that see this rise as an economic or geopolitical threat. Still, China is an undeniable global power, with a rich history and a culture that has admirers around the world, which shows how perception can vary depending on perspective. Number 4. United States. Although the United States is one of the most influential nations in the world, it also faces negative perceptions in several regions. Criticism often comes from issues linked to U.S. foreign policy, including its participation in military conflicts, such as the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, as well as interventions in other regions of the world. These actions generated resentment and criticism in many countries. U.S. domestic politics is also the subject of international debate, especially on topics such as gun control, social inequality, and systemic racism, which affects the way the nation is viewed globally. The cultural and economic influence of the United States is powerful, but this same influence is sometimes seen as imposing Western values on other cultures, which generates some resistance. Despite criticism, the United States continues to be a central global power, both economically and culturally, with a diverse population and enormous influence in various international spheres. Number 3. Israel faces a negative perception in many parts of the world, mainly due to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which has been a point of tension on the international stage for decades. Israeli policies towards the Palestinian territories, including issues such as settlements and the treatment of Palestinian civilians, draw criticism from several nations and international organizations. The ongoing armed conflict and political tensions in the region have resulted in sanctions and boycotts by some countries, as well as heated debates at the United Nations. Although Israel is a technologically advanced nation and has strong alliances with several countries, its actions in the Middle East generate a significant division of opinion on the global stage. It is important to note that these perceptions are often influenced by complex political issues, and the diversity of opinions within the country itself and among its citizens also plays an important role. Number 2. Pakistan faces negative perceptions in various parts of the world, often due to its diplomatic and military tensions with India, particularly in relation to the dispute over the Kashmir region. This conflict, which dates back decades, raises concerns internationally, and both countries have faced criticism for their stances on the conflict. Furthermore, Pakistan has been associated with religious extremism in some international narratives, mainly due to its history of militant groups operating within its borders. This resulted in a negative image in certain Western countries, especially after global events that changed international dynamics. The country came to be seen as a strategic region in security matters. On the other hand, Pakistan has a rich cultural and historical heritage, and many of its citizens seek to promote a more positive image of the country, combating stereotypes and working to strengthen international relations. Number 1. Afghanistan is often associated with a negative image on the international stage, mainly due to decades of armed conflicts and the presence of militant groups that have operated within the country. Since the Soviet invasion in the 1980s, through the US-led war after the September 11th attacks, Afghanistan has been at the center of global crises, which has greatly impacted its international reputation. Continued political instability, challenges of reconstruction after years of war, and human rights issues, especially regarding women, have raised global concerns. Although Afghanistan has a rich history and diverse culture, constant conflicts and the difficulty of stabilizing the region have contributed to a negative view of the country in many parts of the world. It is important to remember that, As in other cases, negative perceptions are often linked to political and military issues, and do not reflect the entirety of the Afghan culture or people who continue to face adversity in their search for peace and stability. Throughout this list, we have seen how different factors, such as international conflicts, human rights issues, and foreign policies, can impact the perception of a country on the global stage. In many cases, the negative image of a country is not necessarily reflected in its population, but is linked to the political and diplomatic decisions of its governments. It is important to remember that these perceptions are often influenced by the media, historical circumstances, and international relations. The social impact of these perceptions can be significant, affecting trade relations, tourism, and even the way citizens of these countries are treated abroad. However, perceptions can change over time as countries adopt new policies, participate in peace efforts, or improve their diplomatic relations. Although the list presents countries facing negative perceptions, it is essential to analyze these factors with a balanced and objective approach. Understanding the context behind the impressions and always seeking international dialogue and cooperation. Thank you for watching until the end. Remembering that the perception of a country can vary greatly, and it is important to consider the historical and political context when analyzing these impressions. The objective of this video was to explore the factors that contribute to these negative views, always in an informative and respectful. If you like the content, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell to receive more videos like this. And leave your opinion here in the comments. Do you agree with this list? Or do you think other countries should be included? Let's continue this conversation in the comments. See you in the next video.